Go. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to this annual EADTU Summit in Brussels. Today, it's a gathering of the finest minds in distance education, as we see each other. A few scientists, of course, but a lot of directors, rectors, and we are also welcome our boosters in the political arena. No? That's also very important. We are more the avengers of academic interoperability, because that's this morning's topic, interoperability. My name is Theo Bastiaens. I'm the president of EADTU and rector of the Dutch Open University. Well, and we have come together today not to save the planet from a meteor as avengers, but sure, if it is needed, we can find a white paper on that too, rescuing you from a meteor. But we are here to co-create a smarter, connected, and especially a more inclusive higher educational landscape. We are looking forward. One day we could have one API, and for the non-informatics, it's an application, a programming interface, one interface for everything. That would be the perfect thing. With joint degrees and a vision, and we, as EADTU, are working on that for many years now. But wouldn't that be wonderful? That it would be more seamless, smooth, etc., to study in Europe. And if you don't think it's wonderful, there's even room for a discussion on if you don't agree that it's wonderful, because we are on this side of the ocean, not there's room for discussion. We are the community that dreams of a Europe where students' records don't get lost in translation or in language, where mobility doesn't require a paper longer than a doctoral thesis, and where collaboration across borders feels as seamless as clicking, accepting. It's not. That would be the idea. And at the heart of this dream is the European Association for Distance Teaching, universities, the EADTU. We are built by alliances, enriched by best practices for decades, and open, stakeholder-driven dialogue. We had a meeting yesterday afternoon, and new, fresh ideas popped up. We are in it for building this together. And if it breaks, we are also responsible to undo it together. And we did that for years now. So you had your coffee. Please silence your notifications and prepare to dive this morning into a morning of hopefully a meaningful exchange, shared wisdom, and probably, yeah, we are in Brussels, a light acronym overload. So let's make interoperability irresistible, I would say. And this morning, I especially welcome Georgi Dimitrov, head of the Unit for Digital Education at the European Commission's Directorate General for Education, Youth, Sport and Culture. He has been with the Commission since 2008 already, I read, and his contributions are numerous. He has had initiatives aimed at enhancing digital education across Europe, but also not only for higher education, across the whole system. Mr. Dimitrov will discuss the current European Digital Education Action Plan, and well, I would invite him to sit here and give his presentation. Very much, give a hand for Mr. Dimitrov.
Okay, so good morning. Thank you very much, Theo. Thank you for the invitation, and the pleasure to be here with you today for the EADTU Summit. I will not make a presentation. I will stick to good old style word, and I would discuss a little bit more how to overdo you on the booster for the interoperability, I wonder. But I will discuss a little bit interoperability itself, not so much the Digital Education Action Plan as such. It's out there, it's well known. I've discussed it also numerous times. But I want to talk a little bit more about the interoperability aspect. And on the way to here, I was reflecting that apart from being such a sunny day, which is seldom in Brussels, the second thing which I think is seldom is to have a summit with the word interoperability in it. I think that's in itself already a little bit of an achievement, because a few years ago, when we, in the Commission, that is, not in the practitioners' world, of course, where you are way ahead, partially, we would not even dare to take that word because it just has too many syllables, you know. So, but I think we've come some way on this. Obviously, there's a lot more, but yeah. So let me share some thought with you on the topic and on the work that we have done in the Commission. And thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you. So consider this: a student from let's say my home country, which is Bulgaria, is attempting to take some partner courses in universities in France or in Portugal, and spends hours and hours navigating some incompatible systems just to find a way to register. Meanwhile, some faculty members spend a lot of hours to manually transfer data, you know, all these different data types, which some of us are familiar with. In fact, this is one where I'm very good at in terms of abbreviations, because I have done some software programming before I joined the Commission. So I'm very familiar with abbreviations for different data types. I would love a world where this does not exist anymore. It's not so useful. But imagine those faculty members spending lots of hours, you know, transferring this data. Is this going to be downwards compatible? Is it going to be upwards? What is going to happen? Well, this is partially, I think, the reality, which we still probably it's an exaggeration, but this is partially also the problem that we are trying to change. And interoperability is not just a technical buzzword, I think, for IT departments, even though it has this connotation. It is much more about the people and the systems and processes which work seamlessly together across different institutions and across, of course, borders, which is very important for our context here in Brussels. And in fact, you could even say that it's the foundation for collaboration and, for example, also for mobility and for innovation, which are aspects which we generally want to promote higher education in Europe. Now, since July 2023, the European Commission has started some work with stakeholders to address this type of challenge, and I want to say a few words about what we have achieved so far. I think the question of European integration in higher education is evident, and an example for it is as I mentioned, mobility. Bologna is now more than 30 years old. I mean the Bologna process, not the city of Bologna, which is much older and probably a little more attractive than the process as such. But the whole idea behind the European higher education area, you know, envisions that students' knowledge and education flow freely across the borders. And we have, on top of that, a very important initiative since 2019. You're all familiar with it, the European Universities, which has driving cooperation further with more than 60 alliances, over 550 institutions, I think, by now, which are also building virtual campuses. And in a way, they are following suit the things that you have been doing already for quite some time. So in a way, they are adopting innovations which have been happening in this field of distance learning for decades now. Yet, a lot of barriers remain, and they are administrative, they're technical, there is also a lot of legal hurdles, and I mentioned incompatible IT systems, lots of standards, legacy infrastructure, and all. I mean, I can go on. And while this has been addressed through different bits and pieces at the European level, I think that we still have obstruction, student mobility. We have problems with cooperation. We have very practical problems. We might even, this is just my personal opinion now, I'm just saying this aside, we might even have issues with the adoption of online and distance learning because of that. I don't know, but I could imagine that this could be the case. So the whole adoption of innovative and teaching practice is, I think, is an issue. And our research, for example, shows that 72% of the university alliances are very early in the operability development and focus on system inventories and priority setting, while only 10% have advanced to scalable solutions. I think the conclusion of that is that if we were to go on just like we do, there would be a patchwork of disconnected systems, and this does not really address the type of vision we have. With the Digital Education Action Plan, we as Commission have committed to fostering a higher performing digital education ecosystem. So it's a very grand goal, very long-term goal, and it is very obvious that interoperability is an important enabler to do that. And in parallel with the European Strategy for Universities, which we adopted a few years ago, we have committed to build a high-performing, more interconnected higher education ecosystem. So 2 years ago, well, less than 2 years ago, we launched, in fact, on the Digital Education Hub, of which I see here a couple of partners. We launched the Higher Interoperability Work Group, which has grown to a community of more than 200 experts and 45 university alliances, primarily focusing really on the universities alliances as a little bit of a playground to focus on, but also including public and private sectors and European networks and standardization organizations. And together, they have developed this higher education interoperability framework, which was presented back in January. This framework provides not only analytical tools to address where you are at, but also, and this is very important, practical solutions and use cases to solve technical aspects and problems, institutional processes, and legal considerations, as well as change management. Importantly, the work group has also put forward some ideas on governance structures to ensure that this framework, which is of course a conceptual framework, and stays relevant and evolves with needs. All of this because it's clear that interoperability is not something that you can achieve in terms of a state, but it is a long-term process which has to evolve, which has to adapt, and requires collaboration, at least institutional and national. But in our case, when I look at our work here, of course, at the European level as well. And in fact, probably European should be default. If there would be a setting, I would say European should be the one. Now, the framework is delivered. We are going into a new phase, which the team has nicely called a New Year's resolution, with some solid plans behind it, which we would like to now help become a reality. The priority of this year is to support the adoption and the implementation and the scaling of this framework across EU higher education institutions. There is an multi-stake consultation group to support this, with, of course, the European Digital Education Hub to guide the ongoing development. And while I think this type of work with tools and support and guidance is very important and essential, what really matters in order to have this succeed is, in fact, some sort of a goal or a vision where you bring this process to. And I think that the vision, in fact, probably is coming slowly into articulation as we speak. For example, yesterday, the Council adopted a resolution that you might have heard about the Joint European Degree label, with the different phases which it has outlined after a lot of not easy negotiation. And I think this agreement works hand in hand with, I think, an equally important piece, which was also adopted yesterday, which is the recommendation on quality assurance and recognition in higher education. This quality assurance recommendations outlining specific measures to make quality assurance more agile, fit for purpose, and I mean more up to date and to transnational cooperation. So with these goals in mind, with this vision in mind, probably implementation of such a framework becomes even more important and even more substantial, because you see what it contributes to at every single level, not only for those of us who are maybe facing the problem every day, as I mentioned, those sending the data, but for those like you who are at the and who are also seeing that sometimes things don't work. So I think this let's say steps of yesterday are a very important means to this work and to realize this vision, which requires a lot of transnational cooperation, deeper cooperation, and also implementation of some of the ideas such as that have been put forward in the framework, the catalogs, the standardized learner exchanges, the interoperable digital identities. Now that's really a big one. And so, I mean, it's not lacking in ambition, let's put it like this. But it is now launched, it is starting, and now the name of, I think, the process is to focus on the implementation, to realize that it cannot be achieved overnight, but that it requires bottom-up as well as top-down cooperation. I think it's very important that it has been created in a truly participatory fashion through the Digital Education Hub, which is a great way to involve different people and to have different voices heard rather than have a vision imposed from somewhere, which sometimes, you know, can happen in policy. So this is not the case, it's the other way around. So what is now important is to drive this forward. And for this, I think everyone here could do things. For example, you can join the work group on the Digital Education Hub. You can help to implement these framework principles in your institution. You can share also your feedback on what has been put forward, because this is not cast in stone. And of course, you can be one of the voices to advocate for interoperability, even though it has too many elbows and probably is not the easiest word to let's say use, but you can become these people who talk more often about it, so that everybody fully realizes how important it is. So with that, of course, we can probably ensure that the higher education institutions of Europe remain at the forefront, which they have been for many decades and hundreds of years, with a lot of innovations. And if you take what I've mentioned, the mobility, there is no place on earth which has that level of integration. So we can drive that process forward, of course, with more digital means, offering students, you know, the type of opportunities which I think we want to offer, and also staff a bit probably and more effective way of working. With this, I think I would conclude my remarks. Thank you very much for your attention. Go ahead.
Thank you very much for coming and for these remarks and this introduction. I wanted just to raise this idea of how interoperability is at the core of Europe. So we are talking about connecting ourselves and understand each other, and this interconnection you were mentioning, and my question would be how to bring this conversation from the IT departments and the IT people that has been dealing a lot with this at the higher education level at our universities, and bring it more to a high level rectors conference meetings and so on. How can we go from this operational at the IT to the strategic level? If you have any tips on that.
Yes. I think I would have 2 points on that. One is to make it as simple to understand by taking just comparisons. Like if you think about the railway or the trans-European networks in energy or in other domains. I mean, these are things which have been achieved for decades. They are not questionable at all. The value added is perfectly clear for everyone involved. I think we have to arrive to a level of simplification for the messaging itself, which makes it clear to the strategic decision makers that this is not a nice to have. It's a must have. So it's really like not negotiable. So that's one part. That's the messaging. The second part is how to, of course, present that message. And I think through fora like that one, through pointing this topic on, I mean, putting it on the agenda of some of the important meetings that take place by just voicing it. And I think by being stubborn about it, just talking about it all the time, because at some point it would sink.
Right, they should be stubborn, no? Yeah.
There-
Name is from Wolters, Mavericks. Thank you very much for this insightful presentation. And maybe as a follow-up for the previous question, so you are trying to put it on many policy agendas. What about also a practical approach? Does this become a condition in the various programs of the European Commission, both research and education, as a condition for projects?
I would love to see that, but I am not yet able to foresee the current cycle for sure of the program. Next one starts 28, because all of this is normally set in a bigger framework. The rules do not change every year. But I can assure you that as part of the simplification agenda now that we have through the different departments, which of course this involves also research to a great extent because universities are there. We are looking at various measures on how to maybe simplify some of the requirements, and in that manner also how to introduce maybe some modernization. So it's not something that is excluded. But it's a bit early in my assessment. Also because maybe the standard framework really exists that can be suggested. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and
Sure.
We have to go to the next presentation, and I have to use the microphone for that. The next presentation will be about developing common learning opportunities through interoperability, and the presentation is from Clare Phelan. Hi, project coordinator from the European University Association, and she will talk about the transitive force of interoperability and institutional challenges. Correct? And you're going also to introduce the role of the importance of the alliances and make it work. So we're looking forward to that. Claire, floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay.
Sandra sits on you first.
Okay, hi everybody. Nice to be here, and thank you for the opening presentations, which I think set the scene very nicely. My name is Clare Phelan. I'm membership and project coordinator at the European University Association. And I was invited here today, I think, to present an overview of a paper EUA published late last year on interoperability. So thank you for the opportunity. So I've already seen a couple of familiar faces among you, but for those of you not familiar with EUA, I will start with a very brief overview. EA is a membership organization representing almost 900 member institutions across the 4 corners of Europe. So this visual gives you an idea of the coverage. It's not absolutely up to date, but an accurate impression. So what does EUA do, or maybe more accurately, why does it exist? EUA was established in 2001. It was a merger, in fact, of 2 organizations. Our job is to advocate on behalf of our members and in the interests of the higher education and research sectors. More importantly, EUA acts as a forum for discussion. And these discussions typically revolve around very pressing and topical issues in higher education and research. So, of course, interoperability has come to the fore in recent years. So, as we know, and we've heard references to transport connections and other systems, the debate around interoperability goes far beyond education. But at the risk of telling you what you already know, I will our interpretation of the benefits, or indeed the potential benefits. So interoperability enables the seamless and secure sharing of data across institutional and national boundaries. Happily, this would then allow for diverse systems to talk to each other, deepen interinstitutional cooperation, and ultimately transform learning pathways. So, as I mentioned, we published a briefing late last year, it was in November. This was the culmination of a lot of discussion we'd had with our members on the subject of interoperability and also in broader context of digital transformation. So, with the understanding that the benefits of interoperability were most heavily or most prominently explored within the European University Alliances, we set about finding out what was actually happening on the ground. So the process for developing briefing was quite straightforward, I would say. We conducted a series of interviews with practitioners within our member institutions whose everyday reality concerned the exchange of information among partners. This is not our reality sitting in an office in Brussels. So, as always, the conversations we have with these practitioners are illuminating. We need to know what's happening at the coalface, ultimately. So, after some labor, the outcomes of these very informative and insightful conversations, and indeed insights we'd gathered through with more Brussels-based stakeholders, were collated into a briefing paper. And the link is there. I assume you'll have the slides afterwards. Developing common learning opportunities through interoperability, a status and outlook for European higher education. So we've heard reference to the technical obstacles and the barriers, and the paper does recognize that these technical infrastructure is ultimately the building blocks of interoperability. And that this in itself presents its own challenges. However, EUA comes from a slightly different angle. We don't have a huge amount of technical expertise to contribute, so we refrained from encroaching too much on that conversation and instead took a more future-orientated angle. So the paper, it looks beyond the technical elements while very much recognizing that there are very present obstacles there. It highlights the converging political factors and forces that have brought the conversation perhaps to the forefront of people's minds in talking about the future of mobility and transnational cooperation. Some key articles, I don't need to go into that, data standards, automation, but I think the value of the paper and where it maybe takes a slightly different perspective is the 3 possible outlooks it offers for the future. I will walk you through some of the elements of these future scenarios, but before that, I will just give you a little bit more context. So the scenarios are not necessarily probable. So I've learned that in doing some of these foresight exercises, it's more about what is conceivable than what is. So it addresses some of the deeper political questions. At first glance, not all, but maybe some of the one in particular scenario might seem quite far-fetched. But nonetheless, talking about the future, and we heard that it's a long process. Change doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. It is important to bear in mind that the obstacles that we're facing in the everyday, these don't necessarily set the limits for interoperability's potential, and this shouldn't preclude having future-orientated discussion about what could potentially happen down the line. Okay. So here are the three scenarios. So we know that the current vision for interoperability focuses very much on mobility, physical and virtual. But we can imagine three scenarios that, in our view, are all worthy of investigation. The first one presented here, no substantial change. So we continue along the trajectory that is maybe path of least resistance. The second one is the scope to scale up within the European University Initiative, which is not altogether unimaginable. And then the third one is upscaling beyond EUI, this is maybe where we look at very much the transformative potential of interoperability. Okay, I'm going to take you through them. So the first one, no substantial change, might sound very familiar and undramatic. So the programs students follow are very much anchored in the home institution, and I'll talk about maybe that concept is also evolving a little bit. Limited capacity, both in the number of participants and in the number of pathways or courses that they might be able to pursue within their trajectory. On the plus side, we could imagine that the links become very cemented among the partners. But maybe one of the shortcomings might be the fact that this make it work attitude, which is very positive itself, but is often very dependent on project funding, which can be sometimes, as we know, very precarious. Upscaling within the European University Initiative. So these are, as I said, the briefing kind of outlines these more analytically, but I'm going to present just a few of the key features. So in this scenario too, the programs or the modules, we can imagine that they might be created with partners. So that the idea of a home institution, you can see that it's already changing. Potentially the programs would draw on the strengths of the participating partners, thereby perhaps avoiding duplication of offering in various institutions. So ultimately, we might think of a very kind of large scale integrated course catalogs that access is almost unrestricted. The question, I suppose, is would this sort of precipitate a stratified system where the learning experience within Alliance, as a student within an Alliance, is really very dramatically different to somebody who's not on that pathway or studying in an institution that is not a partner in such an initiative. So if we can sort of conceive of this, you'd have to imagine the requisite for this approach would be very strong coordination of quality assurance. We spoke about that, digital services, and the learning and teaching strategies across the Alliance. Okay. I'll talk to you now about scenario 3. So this is where it could get interesting. So it presents a future that is admittedly highly speculative, but this shouldn't mean that it can't be thoroughly explored. So it would be based on the concept of a united open European course catalog. maybe slightly controversially, this might imply a level of flexibility that indeed undermine the European University Initiative. And it captures the notion of learning everywhere, all of the time. But it's hard to see the drawbacks initially. Maybe you do. But of course, this raises huge political and practical questions. How would the costs for maintaining such a system be distributed? And how would it ensure how would it be equitable and accessible, thereby facilitating meaningful learning for all participants? I probably don't need to tell you that this scenario would require a system of easy credit recognition. Maybe we're on a pathway towards that. Credentials that are flexible, but of course there are not only technical considerations, but also cultural considerations that would underpin this. They're the three scenarios. In conclusion, I think our key message that interoperability merits more than a discussion on the technical and management elements, though these are very real. But it hints to interoperability as a potentially transformative development that touches on a vision for European as a whole. And I think Georgi already talked about the vision kind of coming to us incrementally. So this is the beginning of a much larger discussion. Certainly EUA wants to continue being part of that discussion. So with a view to maybe sparking some further reflection or debate, I'm going to leave you with a few questions that are persisting. And a couple of these have come up since the publication. So I think that's interesting as well, you know. So effort and demand. Is investment proportionate with the appetite for mobility? We can see so many events. The next one could be irresistible interoperability as a title, who knows? But we see all of these people in a room, we talk to our members, we can see the commitment, we can see the momentum, we see the drive is there, and assume this is based on a demand. But we have to, there's a balance to look at there. The second question, I think, is scalability. And this is maybe the crux of the issue for EUA. Coherence at national level. I mean, Georgi talked about European as being the default. When we talk to our members, we very much see that in terms of their data collection and data reporting, their number one priority and obligation is to their national authorities. So until that is solved, it's very difficult to imagine something scalable that might align more with scenario 2 or 3 presented. So I think this is for EUA something that it comes back to us again and again. And the third question I leave you with, which I alluded to, is the home institution and whether the perceptions of this and the responsibilities might change. So people have an attachment to their home institution. You know, there's an obligation to look after the well-being of the student, their sort of spiritual health and their mental health, apart from the delivering and imparting knowledge. So imagine a system that's completely fluid and students have a huge range of options to select from. I think the question of the home institution might change, and I think this audience in particular might be able to offer some insights into that. So I'm going to finish there, and thank you very much for your attention.
Then the big dream. More questions than this, but these are also good questions. So we have 2 questions.
Thank you.
Hi.
For your type of presentation. And regarding these questions, especially the first one,
Yeah.
Well, first, I have to say, I don't. What
And yeah.
can be reframed?
Okay.
Could increase, increase enough that you have to for mobility. Because sometimes, I mean, if you have this very, very young growth from going from one place to the other, traffic is limited. But even build this, the adequate road, the traffic increases. So interoperability may increase that.
Absolutely.
And it's not, I mean, it's not to say that the question is asking in the wrong way, is that both things have to be asked.
No, I think completely valid and legitimate what you say. And I'm sure people are familiar with the chicken and the egg analogy, you know. So if you create the opportunities, you would imagine that the appetite increase is proportionate with that. But yeah.
Yeah, very sure. And we talked as well about the strategy for going from 1 to 3, because I think the third scenario is quite different from the first two. The first two, I think it's feasible.
Yeah.
Feasible. The third one, that's really another thing, because there you speak about curricula and growing capacity and trust.
Yes, absolutely. No, these aren't presented as ambitions we need to all work towards necessarily. They're more presented as possible scenarios that may evolve, and maybe you can say that some have benefits and some have shortcomings, and how to weigh up that balance. But the idea is not necessarily that they're even mental, that maybe scenario 3 is completely out of the question and is not what people want at all. I suppose we just have to consider if we talk about interoperability transforming higher education cooperation, and the idea that the very traditional idea of a university gradually evolving with the universities have more of a mandate now for lifelong learning, for citizen engagement. This could potentially absolutely transformative and turn the notion of an idea as a university as we understand it on its head, and that may not be what people want.
Thank you very much. Great food for thought, and I think when we have a break, we have a lot also to you, but also
okay.
I see we have to stick to this dream, but I also see on the national level we are busy with many other things that are walking away from this. Also, I'm from the Netherlands, so we are focusing on the national problems, and our politicians are not so much busy with this.
Yeah,
that's really a big issue.
I think the dream or the vision will have many iterations, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Okay.
Okay, we go to the last presentation before the coffee break. It's Evelien Renders, advisor international education at SURF, and she's talking about a seamless European educational area, and especially also a digital ecosystem, a toolkit, interesting, and a roadmap for implementation. That's exactly what you want. So here comes the roadmap. Evelien, floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Before I dive in, can people hear me if I stand up? Yeah? Okay, perfect, because I love presenting standing up. Thank you for doing the technique.
You have to take into account we have a lot of people online, so
can they hear me as well, do you think?
Yeah.
Okay. So also welcome to everyone online. Let me talk you through interoperability. Specifically from the European Digital Education Hub. Georgi already introduced it. I have a lot of slides and some of them will fly by. I don't need you to grasp all the details. You can look them up later. I want you to grasp the storyline, the bigger picture. So I hope that I do that for you in the next 20 minutes. I'm Evelien Renders. I work at SURF. SURF is the Dutch NREN, the National Research and Education Network. We do things like EduRoam or EduGame. So maybe you have know those terms. First of all, we've been talking a lot about interoperability and been speaking these many syllables behind each other. But if we look at interoperability, we can actually tell a story about the ecosystem. And I think that this goes to the point of Georgi's clear and simple message, but also being stubborn, right? We need to present this at all places, put it on the agenda. So if you look at the education ecosystem, there is a learner in the middle of a learner journey. And this learner goes through different steps: orientation, finding the courses that they want to do, application, education, and certification. And this on a course level, or if you do this on a program level, it always goes through these steps. And when you look at the education, for example, we will talk about different use cases that are used during the education phase, but the certification phase is, for example, the European degree, right? That falls into that category. But this is only the top layer of a very interesting stack. And in that stack, there's a lot of information and data going forward and backwards between administrators, like Georgi mentioned, and we need IT people or the people who also know how to exchange that data. So the layer beneath the user layer is the organization and processes layer. You also need applications and information, and it's getting more and more technical. And then the technology layer. So you also know, how can we use blockchain? Do we even want to use blockchain or not? And if you then are connecting these institutions together on these different layers, we call that interoperability. And it creates for a more safe and a more transparent procedure if you do it well. And of course, in the end, the student would like to be happy with that very seamless journey. They only log in with one account. They have Wi-Fi everywhere they go. That's already a case, actually. So to discuss this within your institution, you need to look at it from different perspectives, because it's not only the student that we're looking at, it's the process manager, it's the technology person. And sometimes you lose sight of the student. If you look at it from the top to the bottom, you actually don't see the student anymore. So this is an animation. Normally it's narrated, but I like to narrate it myself because that's a little bit more engaging than having a voice like that. And this is one of the visualizations that you can actually use yourself. It's on Interoperability.eu. And this is one of the steps that we're taking to create very clear and consistent metaphors for complex things like interoperability. So what are we then talking about when we're talking about, for example, the Digital Education Hub? I usually start with highlighting the 4 areas of digitalization in education, because you might see a headline in the newspaper saying, we need more digital education. And they might start talking about how we need to teach our students about AI. Well, that's a very different thing than using AI to facilitate the student process. So we need to separate those out, because otherwise it's going to be one big mess. So the first layer is about teaching the students about digitalization, digital literacy, how to do research. But then we need to also deliver the teaching in a digital way. So then we talk about virtual classrooms, about videos, about flipped classrooms, learning management systems. And then we need to facilitate the teachers by having education logistics that are smooth. And that is where we go into the interoperability layer that I'm going to talk to you about today. It is about, how do the students log in? How do they search for their courses? How do they enroll and apply? And how do they get their credentials verified? And then you have, of course, the general business processes, and that's the organizational layer. Everybody needs finance, everybody needs a CRM, but that's also not what we're talking about today. So the Digital Education Hub was already introduced. I'll go through this quickly. There was a working group started 2 years ago. And the organization, 65 alliances are working across 570 institutions, and they are all trying to build their own virtual campuses and whatever they kind of perceive underneath that term. And these alliances, they go through a journey. They sign a framework agreement, and then once they start planning their work packages, they see, we promised a lot. We promised a lot. We actually said that we would have, within 4 years, we would have a virtual campus, we would have everything running. And the people who wrote that down were usually working in the international office. They were not working in the IT office. So they go with the bag of money, they go to their IT office and they say, we have this within 4 years. And the IT people say, we also have, our own university to run, security rules, we have our own problems. So how do you then go about these 9 institutions to actually see if you can implement these promises that you made? Well, you can start by having a synthesis report of the alliance. Okay, what are my 9 institutions actually already doing? Which systems are they using? Which LMSs are they using? Are they using Canvas or Brightspace or whatever there is? And then where is the overlap, right? So what is the alliance's interoperability status quo? And this is one of these implementation resources that came out of the working group. So you can do a self-assessment, for example. Then you can look at, okay, where are the gap analysis? And how can we start identifying the quickest wins to achieve interoperability? And that's different for each alliance. And I cannot stress that enough, because some alliances think they do all these things that need to be done, and they think I need to do everything all at once. No, my company is named Surf. And I always make this metaphor of when you go surfing, you actually need to choose which wave to take. You cannot take every wave. You will be exhausted, burned out, and maybe even dead in the ocean. So you will choose very carefully, okay, that's the wave that I'm actually going to ride, and then you ride that wave. It's a very technical process. So choosing your interoperability priorities, and then actually looking at the implementation resources to start implementing. But what are implementation resources, right? I hear you thinking. So these are the outputs that were delivered a few months ago. And one is the governance model that we already mentioned, but also we had an inventory mapping, which I will go into in a little bit, and the implementation guidelines. You will be sent this presentation as well, by the way. So we started a mapping where 41 alliances actually joined in. And we saw that we had a high participation, and a lot of these alliances were in a very early phase of interoperability. I think actually Georgi mentioned that too. So having that advanced phase of interoperability is something that we still need to work towards. In that sense, I feel like we are scenario 2 that Claire just presented, and we are scaling up from, let's say, 50 interoperable institutions in Europe to 500 or 570. And then the next phase is a very steep scalable thing, because you go from 500 to 5,000 institutions. So if you think about, for example, the Erasmus process, right, from that came out of also Bologna and the student mobility around it, that is for 5,000 institutions in Europe, that is a case that they are using Erasmus. So that's one of the case studies that we can use to actually say, okay, we're going to implement this. Now, why do they want to work on interoperability? Actually, we're very happy to see that they think it's going to have, in the end, less administrative work, but also this seamless learner journey was mentioned, and user centricity and collaboration. So they are trying to make this cross-national learner journey. And I want to point out, actually, that there was one question that Claire posed about effort and demand, right? There's so little mobile students, and we have so much effort going into it right now. But it's not just about international mobility. It's also about national mobility. And then you have local mobility, because one university is actually not one university. Know that one university has 7 faculties or 20 schools. And those 20 schools are not even interoperable on a local level. So if you're talking about interoperability and you need to convince people, you say, hey, how easy is it for your students to go from the Faculty of Arts and take one course on, I don't know, software programming, for example, and then start them seeing them sweat a little bit. Like, oh, we have different semesters, we have different testing periods, and actually it's not interoperable at all on a local level. So that's also something that we can actually tackle with this, with an interoperability framework. Well, this is actually something that I will go through really quickly. So we started the European Education Working Group with use cases, defining what are we talking about. So just as I was justifying the 4 layers of digital education, now we are going into that interoperability, that 3rd layer, and we are looking what is then happening with the student every step along the way, and which use cases can we then also clarify, so that we're talking about the same things. So the education one, you have access to the tools, you need to work together in the tools, you need to actually generate the data. And this really helped us, because this gave us a very clear reference model to talking about this across the 600 institutions. And this slide deck is also downloadable actually from interopervisual.eu. So this is all open source and you can actually reuse it, which is already being done actually. I see this coming back in a lot of presentations. So I think that's our stubborn, simple message we want to actually have across Europe. And of course, overarching use cases, user identity and institutional identity. And this feeds back into the question that Claire also asked about what is my home institution then? If my home institution is providing my student ID anymore, if I am not, I studied at Radboud University in the Netherlands, very proud that I had a student card that said Radboud University. But what if I have a European student card? How am I still going to relate to that identity of my institution? And that's a very interesting question actually to discuss, not from a technical side, but actually from a side of feeling, of trusting, like I am a part of this institution and this institution gives me also a type of value to be at that institution. So we looked with these alliances to see what are they tackling right now. So they are tackling mostly the discovery use case, the first one, how to each other's course catalogs open and exchangeable. And this is just a quick example of one of these resources that we are providing to the institutions. We're saying this is an example of a flow that you can look at where what does your Alliance education team do? What does your IT team need to do? What is the leadership involved in? And that way they can create kind of workshops or something within their alliance to look at that together. Another example is how do these standards actually overlap? So there are different technical standards to choose from, semantic standards to choose from, and how do we know which one to actually implement? That is a more technical workshop and implementation guideline. And this is something that, this idea or the need came up from the working group, and then there are different groups taking this further. So for example, there's a project going on right now, Quality Link, and it's focusing in on this specific point of course catalogs and how we kind of map these standards to each other, and how do we make sure that these standards are interoperable within themselves? So how is one a profile of the others, for example? So this is how the Digital Education Hub is going forward with interoperability. For the next year, there's already a working plan, now an open call for new expert group members, and I will share the link a little bit later. And then, of course, the coordination is really important. So how do we make sure that these institutions keep talking to each other for the governance? So this is kind of the overview of how this is coordinated. SURF is a part of one of the core consortium members, and then there's education stakeholders and independent experts. And yeah, I think this structures work really well. It's not over-governed, but it's actually yeah, a really good one. So looking at one of the other spin-offs, we talked a lot about kind of the digital education area. And once you start going into that, you feel like, this is quite overwhelming. There is an action plan. And then there is, for example, the Digital Education Action Plan's website. And then you go into that action plan and you see all of these different things popping up. You see all of these different projects, and some are organizations, some are projects, some are temporary, some are long-term. How do you make sense of that mess, I would call it? It's a very nice mess, it's still a little bit of a mess. So colleagues of mine, they are creating these kinds of overviews all the time, right? Every few months we have a conference, we go and we create another one of these overviews. And it doesn't really make it that much more clear. So 2 weeks ago, a group of us kind of decided, okay, can we do this in a more, I don't know, sustainable way? And we call that Edu Access. And this is a database, and it's based on the following data model. You have an organization that you're working for. It might be a higher education institution, might be an NREN, the EUA, or another organization. And sometimes they give out funding, but they are all working on different standards and documents and services. And some of these are being worked on in programs or projects that are temporarily funded. Those we call collaborations. But it's to different topics. And if we put all of this data together in this structure, then we get a big overview. And I'm now not sure, I'm looking at Stefan. Can I use internet? Stefan is not here, right? I mean, I can just try and then see if people are.
We are connected on Zoom, so it should be connected.
Let me see if I can just. Then I think I need to click this one and then go here. So this is a website that actually shows you the difference. Yes, there's my mouse. It shows you different organizations working together on digital education. So here you see again the same learner-tree topics and the latest records that have been updated. And also right now we have about 700 institutions in here that are working together. And this database is still under construction. We are filling it more and more. And if you think about who this is, and for example, as an alliance, you can go here to look at which different services are being used by different alliances. And for example, I looked up OpenEU, and there's no data yet on which collaborations they are part of, but OpenEU is actually in the database already, and also all of their partners can be found here as well. So this is a database that we're working on together, and I think that this has a lot of potential to make life easier for our colleagues that are working on these presentations every day. So this is just one of the examples of how we can, how we are working on this concretely instead of just creating documents all the time. So this is about user identity, for example. And I think that is all. And I hope I stayed within my time. Let me just, a little bit. And otherwise, you can always find me in the coffee break or in the lunch. I will put on the display the working group that you can still sign up for. Thank you so much.
To be fair, we have room for 2 questions. But I'm Georgi from the European University Association. Evelien, as you said, we are probably in the second scenario that Clare presented. How much time does it take us to get to the third one?
I love that question. I hope that I had a call, but I don't. But I was actually writing this down. So if we take 2028 as kind of a goal, right? To say 2028, we need to have interoperability as a requirement for every one of these fundings that are being asked for. I think that would be a very nice goal that you'd love to see. So let's make that happen. So that means that the scale to the 5,000 institutions starts from 2028. And then I would say take from 2025 to 2027 to make sure that these alliances are all interoperable. Then we start scaling up to the 5,000 from 2028. But that would be my hope.
Very generous. You give us 2 years.
Yeah.
And how would you assess the actual demand?
Ooh, on a local, national, or international? I think that is one of the questions that the EUA is further discussing. It's a really complicated question. And also this demand is changing. I mean, there's a whole other topic, but the geopolitical kind of environment, right? We're going to have more migrants because of the climate crisis, for example. How is that going to affect our credentials? We need to recognize credentials from people who are fleeing their home country. We need to be able to let doctors be doctors in another country. There's this example of, someone who fled to New York, and he's actually a taxi driver now, but he was an open heart surgeon. But because it doesn't get recognized, he cannot practice his profession anymore. So we're going to need skilled people in Europe to be able to travel or migrate to another place because that's necessary or they want to, and they still do whatever they were skilled to do before. And I think that is one of the big questions for the next 10 years. And I think that we're gonna at least need to have some part of the solution in the university networks. But yeah, that's just one of the considerations. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think thank you for being here and for your presentation. Very emotional, so it's like, what if I
You do time until 11. The coffee is downstairs. Thank you very much. Nice panel.
And I only have a few of these. If you still don't have them, then go grab them. Great question. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Perfect. Okay.
As long as we look good, it's okay.
There was consensus. Time, you know, the time is. As promised, we are going to start with a panel and of course about interoperability and universal alliances, and it's moderated and hosted by the always charming Pastor Martinez from the WOC. So go ahead.
Thank you very much, Theo. Thank you very much and welcome back to the very interesting summit today. Welcome also back to the people that's following us online. So this second part of the summit, we wanted to be more practical. So we've heard a lot about the vision, also the frameworks, and even the metaphors that help us a lot to understand what interoperability, and now I have how to pronounce it, just try it away, is about the higher education. But we wanted also to here and to bring you some specific and concrete examples of what interoperability is about at different levels at those European universities, alliances. But let me start by remembering that this is a long way. So this interoperability idea began creating this force with the Bologna process, as was already mentioned by Georgi Dimitrov. And it's all about this idea of the European higher education area that we are all talking about. So let's think on the ECS. So everything started with this recognition, academic recognition. We've been evolving through the different digital tools and platforms. And now, and I also agree with previous speakers, and even some questions in the room, we are in this scenario 2 by EUA, where the European Universities Alliances are contributing to make it a reality, to make it happen. I'm sure most of you know what they are, but the European Universities Initiative was launched in 2017 and as a flagship program from the Commission within the Erasmus Plus program. And now we are 65 alliances running and sharing and growing. As I was already introduced, I'm Pastora Martínez-Samper. I'm Commissioner for International Action at the Open University of Catalonia and also the Alliance Coordinator Open EU, mentioned before by Evelien. Thanks for that. We are bringing also here this idea of not one size fits all, and indeed it is real. So every alliance is different, and I'm very happy to have here 3 of those alliances, 3 of those examples, very different from the perspective. So we have here Una Europa, represented by Bert Williams from KU Leuven. Una Europa is made of very big, well-recognized research universities across Europe. We also have Eurotech here with Ben Parker by my side, which is more the technical universities that join up in order to create this strong partnership. And then we have OpenEU with Karma Pages, myself, representing this strong partnership with the open universities in Europe. And the 3 will explain us with concrete and very interesting examples what the alliances are working in that field, interoperability, but not just interoperability. So I will start giving the floor to Ben. Right, Ben Parker, as I said, he's coming as his project manager for the Eurotech Engineering University Alliance, coming from the Eindhoven University of Technology in the Netherlands, and he's been working to improve the scale, quality, and ease of mobility for students and staff across Europe. He is currently this Eurotech Alliance virtual campus, and he will give more details on 2 specific initiatives that the Eurotech is working on. So Ben, the floor is yours. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Pastora, for the introduction. Can everyone hear me okay? Well, thanks. It's lovely to be here today just to share a little bit about what we've tried to do so far. I was talking in the break about how, as a principle, we try and make everything work as soon as we can. It's okay if things are imperfect. I think one of the big benefits of the European University Initiative is that it's given a lot of room to just initiate, to try and get things working and see what sticks. As Pastora said, we are a collection of engineering and technical universities. Because there's a similar theme between us, perhaps a bit of a head start for some things being interoperable, but that's where the similarities might stop. There are still a lot of differences between us as universities. I spend a lot of my time with technical IT teams across the partners, and we always say that the IT solution should follow the strategy, the decisions that are made. We want it to meet a real goal, not just be a lovely technical product that sits on a shelf. But we do find often we're having to unpick a lot of historic decisions that have been made, or parts of the land that exist in terms of technical legacy systems. So those are the partners that are within our alliance. As with most of the university alliances, this is a wonderfully complex thing that lists all the ideas that were first suggested that we should try and tackle, and the different task groups, work packages that should contribute towards those. Today, I'm just going to talk about one little sliver of that, which is about our course catalogue and how we've tried to automate it to enable the scale that we want of mobility, whilst maintaining the quality that always should exist. All of us as alliances have this slightly daunting 50% mobility target. For us, we're saying that will include everything from traditional semester in-person mobility to short-term language courses entirely online and everything in between. So we want our students to have some really good quality mobility experiences, but that could look like a huge range of different options for individual students and across the different partners. But it's still a very big goal. And so for us, I know many in the room will be far more familiar with how to make digital teaching, online teaching work well. But for our universities, it's a fairly new thing. So we said a big priority is to tackle how we make these opportunities available for our students, deliver them in a way that is going to be high quality education, and at the end of that, make sure that they can get recognition for what they have studied. So when it comes to our course catalogue, we're always trying to build upon good practice. You'll see in some of my further slides, I'm pinching stuff from the Digital Education Hub. I'm pinching stuff from the Interoperability visuals. That's a really good principle because we want to be able to share our own successes and good practice. But if there's something that already exists across the European scene, we want to make use of it. We don't want to have to reinvent something that has already been done excellently. And so based on that principle, when we were looking at what to use for a course catalogue, an automated catalogue, we saw that there was an example within the Netherlands where there are existing Dutch alliances that allowed universities to display their course data directly from their systems, for students to apply for those opportunities and have their data passed directly between the two universities. And at the end of their studies, to directly return the grades and give certification as needed. That is based on SURF's Open Education API, and we use EduExchange as a course catalogue site. My Academic ID is something we've started using to try and tackle that identity challenge that we've heard about a little this morning. We want it to be that our students can be easily recognized between all our partners and beyond without having to constantly create new credentials or accounts and forget who they are on this occasion, which hat they're meant to be wearing. So we do always try and replicate and build upon existing practice, but we try and simplify things too. We challenge each of our university members that if there are things that are in place just because that's the way they've always been done, some of those are okay to challenge and change. Some of them are in place for good reasons, legal reasons, national restrictions, or just because they work for those universities. And those ones we have to work our way around a little bit. These are the slides you'll have seen already in Evelien's presentation. We try and use this language to give a bit of consistency to what we're talking about. Orientation is a bit like the shop window for our universities. So students can see all the necessary courses they might want to go on. For us, that comes directly from live systems. So anything on our catalogue sites, no one is having to type in information or publish PDFs to make it seen. It's directly coming from our systems. Application, that's the entire process where a student wants to say, I wish to go on this course. What do I need to do to make it happen? And for most of us, it's quite a complex process still at the moment. Lots of paperwork, lots of people involved, lots of decisions to be made, and largely very manual. So we are trying to change that, simplify it, make it a pleasant experience for students, staff, and anyone else involved. When it came to automating our catalogue, which I'll show you in the next couple of slides, we split it up into 3 chunks. The first was all about displaying the course data. In theory, that's the easier piece because the data definitely exists in each of our systems. The second one we're testing at the moment, which is about automating enrollment for students. So the student just has to say, I log in with my existing credentials. I give permission for my data to be shared. There is no big central data dump or database for us as an alliance. It will always go between the 2 universities involved, which is a good principle to follow, but makes things complex sometimes. And at the end of that, when the student has completed their course, we want them to receive their grades back. We have found that at the moment, most students who do any of these opportunities, they are the most keen, the most willing, they don't mind a little bit of friction. But if we want to scale up to the point where 50% of our students are having some kind of international experience, we've got to reduce those hurdles and barriers. We want it to be that even the least keen, least excited, least ambitious students have these opportunities if they want to. This is what our catalogue looks like at the moment. You select which is your home institution. So the discussion around what does home institution mean in the future could get interesting. We also have a separate sub-catalogue for our professional learners, because those tend to be very different types of people, different demographics. But that dictates which courses you see. There are a bunch of filters. We've thought through this very carefully, and we're constantly trying to improve the existing product so that students can navigate and find what they want to find very quickly and easily. But the exciting part is what we're working on at the moment, I think. This is where all a student has to do is give permission for the relevant data to be shared. We're using My Academic ID because it's been used for the Erasmus Without Papers project. It's something that is already a sort of European standard. And I'm one of the people who does get a bit excited by technical standards. I know not everyone will. We're on the same page, but it's something where so much of the ways we work is influenced by technical decisions that have been made. If we're thinking to make something future-proof that will work in 5 years, 10 years and beyond, we want it to be that when I talk about a specific piece of data, I'm confident that anyone in another European country is also talking about that same piece of data. And even something like surnames across Europe can get complex. We have different structures of surnames, different languages that they're kept in. It's all based on this Open Education API, which is one of the technical standards that is widely used and becoming widely used. But there is a lot of work to align that with the other standards, so it's not a competitive zero-sum game. The idea being that we want people to be able to push ahead with these things and be confident that they will be interoperable, even if they remain different. It's not mandating that there must be one single system. I talked a little bit about how we've had to do some other alignment in terms of fields. We found, for example, as a university, we didn't have a single field that said if a course was bachelor's, master's, or doctoral level, which made it a bit complex to display in a nice way to other students. It's no good if you're displaying, this talked about our subject areas. Across our universities, there were something like 150 different subject areas, which is not a nice thing to have to sift through if you're trying to find something in that shop window. So we've done some very pragmatic steps to reduce the complexity. We've agreed a set list of subject areas that should cover all of our courses. Again, as similar types of universities, maybe that's easier for us. I'll skip over that one. This is something I always like to show. I was showing this on my first day when I started. The original 6 partners in our alliance have these differing academic schedules. We're not even talking about timetabling yet and when a course actually runs in a week or a term. This is just roughly when teaching happens, when exams happen, when holidays happen. And I think we only have 1 month in October where pretty much everyone is teaching. Other than that, huge differences, which makes things pretty complex, regardless of the technical solution that we build. This is one of those ones we've said it's a bit of an immovable obstacle. It's like a mountain that we have to preferably build our train line around rather than blow through. But there are lots of other hurdles that are like running race hurdles. You can move them. It takes a bit of political will. It takes a bit of pressure. It takes a bit of an appetite across staff at all levels in the universities. But this is one of those ones where we go, okay, it's largely baked in, and for now we will accept it, but still make it as seamless and stress-free for students so that they have some visibility of this at the point where they're applying for their courses. We do want to think long-term rather than quick fix. So for us, that's why the principle of no central data storage is important. We don't want it to be that someone somewhere is worried about the legality of data that we're holding. For course data, minimal problems. But for person data, students, staff, and anything else, we want it to be that only the universities, home and host universities, have that data stored somewhere. We always are trying to think through, as an institution, we're working in our local or regional settings, our national settings, and international settings, and that will have lots of different factors that affect internal decisions because of it. But by and large, we try and make decisions that will work for everyone across the alliance, and we will stay informed about what's happening across other alliances, other European initiatives, like some of the ones Evelien already mentioned. We work very closely with SURF. They are the Dutch NREN, and they are the ones who are supporting largely with our technical solution for the alliance. We try and make use of terminology and semantic interoperability that has been established through some of the other European-wide groups. We try and stay informed about good ideas, good practice, good suggestions from elsewhere, and hopefully we'll begin to share more of what has worked for us or not worked for us, because both are equally valuable in this kind of setting. But because I mentioned at the start, our alliance has this huge range of things we're trying to tackle. The course catalog being automated is just one of those, but should enable lots of stuff. There are other alliances, I hope we'll hear shortly, who are focusing on different problems, different challenges, and I would much rather that we are able to share that good practice and skip the 3 years of testing and failure that we've had to go through to build something that works. And I'm honestly quite excited about that, because I think we're starting to hear more and more cases of success, good practice that is scalable and replicable. So I will pause there and hand on.
Thank you very much, Ben. Thank you very much. We'll continue. Thanks a lot. We'll leave the questions for the end, for the three of you. But thanks a lot. I will now give the floor to Bert Williams from the KU Leuven University in Belgium. Bert is coordinator of the Student Accounting and Mobility at the Learning and Teaching Services of KU Leuven. He has a specific focus on the administrative organization of joint degree programs, as well as digitalization of mobility processes. And he's also an active member of the community of Una Europa. And in fact, he's been facilitating the startup of an interoperability cluster within Una Europa in order to tackle all these issues. So, Bert, the floor is yours. Thanks.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. So just like Ben, I'll start with if it moves. It does not. Okay, perfect. Thank you. I'll start with a brief introduction of Una Europa, who we are. So we are also a European University Alliance, composed of 11 leading universities spread all over Europe, as you can see on the map. We were among the first generation, 2019. The first and I dare say at the forefront, and I hope we still are. And we aim to stay at the forefront for the time being. We've secured successive rounds of funding to try to do the work that we want to do, which is very broad, just like our universities. They're comprehensive, they are research based. So what we want to do is also very broad, very ambitious, perhaps sometimes too ambitious, but we should try and continue to try. These are the 11. If you're worrying, if you were wondering, I myself am from KU Leuven, located in Flanders, the Flemish part of Belgium. We focus on a number of focus areas regarding our education and research activities. So we bring together our academics in multidisciplinary groups, focusing on 6 areas, which you can see on the slides. Around which all the activities that we want them and that we stimulate them to create and to work together on are based. Both research, education, mobility, online, anything, it can never be too crazy. We try to stimulate their creativity as much as we can. And we also have a number of transversal teams going through the Alliance and everything that we do. Mobility, of course, very much also at the forefront there, but also aspects of sustainability, climate protection, diversity and inclusion, and this student-centered approach that, of course, we all try to aim for. The concrete examples on interoperability and on the challenges and opportunities that we face that I would like to talk to you about today. There are 2. And our first one is the Joint Bachelor of European Studies. The Bachelor of European Studies, or BAS, as we call it, is a 3-year bachelor's program, 180 ECTS, organized by 4 degree awarding partners and 5 mobility partners. So that's 9 of the 11 partners of Una Europa that are involved in this program. And I think we can really call it the flagship program of Una Europa. It's 9. We're gearing up to also include the remaining 2, trying to involve all the partners in this program. The first cohort of students started in 22-23. We currently have 820 students. We are in the 3rd year of the program, and we're preparing to have our first graduation ceremony of the first cohort of students. They will graduate in September 25, and we will celebrate their graduation at the end of October 25 at our partner in Complutense in Madrid. How is the program structured? Semester 1 to 3 take place at the starting university, and the starting university can be any of those 4 degree awarding partners. So also coming back to the discussion of home university, they don't have 1, they have 4. And they have 4 at the whole duration of the program. They stay enrolled at these 4 universities from A to Z all the time. They are students of those 4 universities. Even if they never go there, they will always be interacting with those 4 universities. And then semester 4 to 6 are reserved for mobility, taking place at another of those degree awarding partners or one of the mobility partners. In total, they should study at least 3 different locations across the Alliance. The bachelor is composed of joint trunkers communities. So really the education, the teaching and learning of those joint courses has been created jointly. So these were not existing courses at any of the partners. They were co-created by the academics specifically for the program. There was a strong focus on language as well, on language learning, language teaching. And furthermore, the program is composed of majors and minors in a number of areas, law, philosophy, sociology, you name it. So it's focused on humanities, of course, the program, ending with a bachelor paper and the possibility to do internships as well. The BAS has been and is still a challenge. Not a problem, but a challenge. It was and is something completely new. We never done anything like that. So there are many significant differences with what we already knew. We knew joint programs at KU Leuven and at our partners. We've been involved in Erasmus Mundus since the start, but this was something else. And that's mostly because of the scale. The scale is the big challenge. And those of you that have experience with Mundus Masters and other similar joint programs, you can move around 20, 30 students and find quick fixes and manual fixes to arrange the whole admin and teaching and learning. But it's a different challenge if you're talking about more than 800 students. You can't just fix everything manually. You need different solutions. So the challenges, the problems, they became more and more clear. It's a different student body, bachelors, 18-year-olds, 17 sometimes. We're faced with study progress issues. You can think about something conceptually like this makes so much sense if we moved around like this and that, but the student body is a living body. They don't do what you tell them to do. So you need to adapt along the way. And of course, like always with joint programs, we are faced with different legal and regulatory frameworks. How do you admit students? How do you charge them? Which services do you offer? How do you give them access to those services on an equal level at all of these partners? We aim for jointness. It's a joint bachelor. We try to aim for joint processes, but sometimes aiming for that jointness clashes with efficiency. Sometimes it's more efficient in the short term to take a manual solution. So we try to start from what we know. We use the existing expertise at each of the partners. For example, at KU Leuven, we're very good in diploma verification and credential evaluation. So the our partners use our services for that, and vice versa for different processes. But again, we are faced with the challenges of scale, and we need to reinvent what we did and adapt it. Also in teaching and learning, we aim for this jointness, but that sometimes clashes with the comfort of the learners and the teachers. Do you decide on one learning management system for the whole program? Who do you move around virtually? The students or the teachers? Who needs to adapt to make this program a reality? Nobody likes to adapt, so you need to move at least one of those groups and nudge them into the right direction. How do you teach? Can you agree on one teaching approach? In those joint courses, sure, but on the separate courses, tricky. Evaluation, grading, these continue to be big challenges. And of course, mobility. Mobility is at the core of the program. And here too, we are clashing with regular procedures that we know from mobility, Erasmus and other mobilities, versus this context of a joint degree. We were always able to bypass this in the joint masters that we have. Now, not so much. Because a mobility is something else than an exchange. These are two different concepts. We tend to put them together, but it's not the same. Some elements, some concepts from mobility are irrelevant in a joint degree, like a learning agreement. Why would you talk about a learning agreement in a joint degree? You already agreed on the courses that the student's going to take. And funding, of course. In order to make the BAS a success, and I dare say that it is a success, but an ongoing success, so there's still a lot of work to do, it really requires active involvement, and not just support, but involvement of all the relevant actors within a higher education institution. And I can't stress this enough. With the joint masters, often these were pet projects of academics, at a faculty, and you would let them be and support them. And okay, it was nice. That's not enough here. You need structural support, structural involvement on a program level, on a faculty level, and on an institutional level. Everybody needs to be on board and take their responsibility in order for it to work. And this has been already a trajectory in the BAS. We've seen that. That support was not there at the start on all of these levels. But it's only by gaining that support, and we are gaining it, that we see that now we are able to really cement it into the structure of the universities involved. And here the role of the European University Alliance, so Interoperability, has been crucial. Because what's the difference from the alliances versus other kind of corporations is this top-down approach. There are many negative aspects about a top-down approach, but the positive aspect is that you include systemic cooperation. There is a drive from the central level of the university, not just directors, but central services, and I work at central services, all the way from process owners to IT to also act, and not just respond, but also act to make these projects a reality. So this structural support is thanks to the alliance cooperation, at least in the case of the BAS and of Interoperability. And because of projects like the BAS, we noticed this increased awareness on all levels of the university, not just within a specific program, of these needs that we have and that you have identified throughout what I'm saying on a procedural, a legal, and a technical level to become interoperable. What is one of the possible solutions? I will be brief. One of the possible solutions that we see and that we're also working on in our cooperation in Europa is to work via the blockchain technology that is launched and supported through the EPSI, the European Blockchain Service Infrastructure, which is a way to verify credentials, digital credentials for education. The uses, as you can see on the slide, ranging from admission and registration, but also access to student services. What have we been doing in Europa so far is we are part of the early adopters program with several of the partners, also including other university alliances like ERUA and FilmEU, where we have been working on actual working proof of concepts. I've used it, they work, on how you can actually, as a mobile student, move around and have your credentials verified digitally by the host institution where you're going next. I believe the slides will be shared. There are really nice videos online where this is explained much better than I can do. But what is essential here, we are ready to go into production with the blockchain technology, and at least from KU Leuven's point of view, we are really looking forward to use this for our diploma issuing. We're done with paper. We don't want to use paper anymore for our diplomas. We are ready to start using the blockchain technology to have our diplomas verified digitally. Closing off for the challenge and opportunities on interoperability. So like I said, this awareness on management level, which I think through the BAS we have achieved, because people complain to their boss, this is too much work, that they become aware. So it's not abstract, it becomes very concrete, which helped us to also create a structural support to work on this via this already mentioned interoperability cluster, combining both business and IT, because you need both. Can't just have IT, can't just have business. Identify the problems, not the solutions, but there is this tension between short-term solutions and long-term. You can't just deal with quick fixes, but there is a big call for quick fixes with those facing the problems. And I think the bottom line is that we need even more communication and understanding of each other's processes and how we work. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bert. Thank you very much for those examples. So from two alliances that have been running for some years now, we are, Stefan is helping you, Karma.
Thank you.
So we are moving to a brightly new, because we are just 6 months live, which is the EADTU-EU Alliance, and I will give the floor to Karma Pages from the work. She's researcher at the Departments of Economics and Business Studies at the work, but she also served as the work director unit for labor market research and analysis. Karma, while we're putting the presentation, she holds a PhD in economics from Boston University and extensive work and research on workforce development and lifelong learning at the work itself, but also at the World Bank and the Inter-American Development Bank. So Karma, the floor is yours. Thanks.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Do I have to press? Yes. So good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. And today, my 10 minutes, I believe, right, allowed. I'll talk about, first of all, I'd like to present OpenEU. Many of you know it. Some of you are here. and then talk about one of the activities, professional GPS. And we think it's it's one of the many activities, as it's been already said, right? Many work packages, many activities. But what's interesting about this one is that it adds another layer of interoperability, and interoperability needs that I like to discuss. And in many ways, so we're developing products like joint catalog of micro-credentials, a joint master's degree that will have a lot of the same challenges, and definitely I'm delighted to see that we'll be able to benefit a lot from the way that you have open for us. And in our case, we made already some advancements in terms of this other layer, which is connecting what's happening in the world of university with what's happening in the labor market. So a few words about OpenEU, then I'll talk about this tool and all the interoperability that it requires. And then I'll sort of tell you a little bit of the next steps and so on. So OpenEU, we are a consortium of 10 full universities and 4 associated partners. 9 of the universities are open universities. We have and 5 traditional ones. We have also non-academic partners, as many of these alliances, 5 industrial associations, digital network, 1 EU association of mentorship, so quite diverse group. Our vision is to become the Pan-European, I'm sorry. This is from my inter-American time. Pan-European Open University that harnesses digital education for all. This is very important. This is in the end, this all, university for all. Our mission is to establish a learner-centric, inclusive, digital, and green open university, and also to contribute to the digital transformation of higher education in Europe, not in America. So tackling 3 challenges: lifelong learning, this is very important for us, I'll discuss why, inclusive and equitable higher education, and digital transformation, and I would say also green of higher education. So as open universities, we have this very special constituency, if you want. We are open to many different, and our student body is very diverse. Lifelong learners, people, let's say, even 25 and older, in all types of situations, skillers, reskillers, curiosity learners, many people in many different situations. We're connecting with people in remote areas, difficult to access areas, people with disabilities. We also have the traditional body of students, the traditional, if you want, university students. So it's a very diverse group of students. And here you have the OpenEU members, 8 open distance universities and 2 on-site universities. So talking now about this activity, professional GPS. So as I said, I mean, part of the work packages of our alliance, they have to do with more traditional aspects, like creating a joint program, creating a joint portfolio of micro-credentials. Lifelong learning is particularly important for us because many of our students come to further their position or their situation in the labor market, to improve career opportunities, to find a better job, to get. And so it's been, we know by our data that that's one of the main aims to enroll in university. So, and also as we are aiming to provide a more personalized, more modularized, more personalized pathways, what we find is that students have more and more choice. But as you know, more choice is not always good. Choice sometimes leads to paralysis. It's like, I have all these opportunities. What do I do with my life? What's the best for me? So what we wanted is to develop a system that in a way can help you in this in your career. And this is not a system to decide what do you want to do in terms of your career, or you want to be a lawyer, you want to be an engineer. This is a system that basically is meant to assist you along your career once you made that, maybe that first decision in your life. So And this is particularly important because the evidence indicates that people, particularly those that are at the beginning of their careers, particularly welcome this type of orientation. Here I have some data from Spain. This is, we did a sample of work people in 25 and 60, and we find that, but in this particular group, which is 25 to 34, more than 1/3 had used orientation, 1/3 more or less didn't, and the other third wanted but didn't get it. So they looked for it, but they didn't find it. So why a professional GPS? Another reason. And here there is like a language disconnect, right? This remind me this old adage that said men are from Mars and women are from Venus. Well, something like that happens because they said that we have different ways of communicating. Same thing happens between the universities and the labor market. Universities speak about degrees, speak about subjects, speak about learning outcomes. The labor market speaks about occupations, speaks about skills, competences, and so on. And we really don't have many ways, many joint avenues to put all these two languages together. So what we have is that we protect our students in our cocoon. We basically provide them with a language, and then when they get out, oftentimes they cannot make sense of what they find outside because they just don't have a way to relate. And they think that what's important is their degree. Oftentimes that's not the case in the labor market. What's important is your competences. They don't know how to make them transparent. They don't know how to actually put forward what they know. So the idea here is to help them make this bridge. It's not about finding them a job. It's helping them in how they conceive their careers, how they think about themselves and their knowledge, and then how they present themselves outside in the labor market. And also, where should they go in the labor market? At least some ideas. So, so what does this tool do or aims to do? It helps learners understand how to communicate their achievements and to understand what skills they will need in their chosen occupational role. This may be a role that already have and I want to prepare further for, or a role that I want to sort of dive in. Provide labor market and career and employment information to improve education and career decisions. And so I'm going to tell you a lot about this occupation, whether this is an occupation that's kind of emerging or declining, and so on. And right now, this is a tested tool. It's already been implemented in one of our universities at work, and more than 3,000 users have used it after 2 months launch. So what are the interoperability challenges? As you can imagine, I mean, here there are many. So a lot of stuff is happening in the background to be able to put stuff on the forefront. First of all, we need a common portfolio language. So everything that's been said here, right? I mean, we are putting, if we want to have students access a tool and be able to find recommendations on courses that they'll take in the university, but also in the other courses of the alliances, we need clearly to have a joint language for our portfolio. So everything that's been said before applies here. And we, again, I'm looking forward to learn more from what you've done. But then we also need a common labor markets language. I mean, we're talking about skills and occupations. Our students will be able to look at the labor market, not only in their country, but also in the other countries of the alliance. So we need to have the same language across countries, again, in terms of skills and occupations. And then we need to match portfolio, our courses, they need to speak the language of the labor market. So we need to do this bridge between courses and the labor market. And also even within skills, we have that there are many ontologies out there. There's for example, ESCO, there is another ontology like us. I mean, there's an American one. I mean, there are so many ontologies. So which one do we use? Of course, we are European university, so ESCO has to play a big role. But again, it's part of the hurdles that we need to face. So basically how we're going about, as I said, we need to basically have common standards and language within the academic side, common standards, and within the labor market side, and then be able to join them so this works seamlessly. Our choices right now is that we need to find, and I'm not aware of it, but probably you made more strides there. I'm not aware of a common language for learning outcomes because this is what we need. and career opportunities. So for example, if I want to know whether this master prepares you for this or this, let's say, occupation, I don't know. I need to have, I would need to have sort of a joint, again, a common way to refer to that. And then I also, we're going to use ESCO and life science ontologies. That's already decided. So, and then we'll join. So basically our approach is going to be to homogenize the left, homogenize the right, and then connect. So it is kind of more of a technical approach. Now the tool, very quickly, because I think we're already past time, right? So let me skip it. Basically, the tool allows you to get into the web page. You can select an occupation. It gives you a bunch of skills that are important for that occupation. You can select them, and then it provides the results in terms of what are the occupations that you're going to need. These are the most important competencies for this occupation. And it also highlights the ones that you don't have. So it says, these are the ones you have, these are the ones you don't have. So, and in the future, right, this is kind of your to-do list. In this case, I've selected very few. I mean, I did this myself, so I just did randomly, but in principle, it would give you like what you know, what you don't know yet. And then the next step is to add the recommender based on the portfolios that we mentioned. So now, what are we going to do? Add data granularity. So we are building on actually more occupation, more skills, continue improving the user experience of this tool, create reskilling journey. And right now we only have an upskilling journey. Matching portfolio data to skills data. We are working now on the portfolio side. That's why the recommendation part is the most difficult one, because we have to bring the data first, standardize it in the way that they are mentioned, and second, link it to the labor market. So that's what we'll be doing this year and next year. And then based on that, we can build the recommendations. And then, of course, building the joint portfolio, that's part of the parallel work, right? I think I mentioned that, building a machine-readable database of learning outcomes, yes. And basically, we will match the labor market. Once we have a common set of learning outcomes, right? Then we'll match that to the skills data with an AI-assisted matching system. So basically, that's it. It has another layer. We think that this layer is going to bring also higher payoffs, in the sense it's going to connect our students within institutions, but also to the labor market of the involved countries. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Karma. I'm not sure we can 5 minutes. So we have time for a couple of questions if they are in the room. I open now the floor there. But and while you are thinking the questions, also thanks a lot, because I'm sure you've seen the diversity both of the alliances, but also of all the different instruments, initiatives we are building up together, and also mutually learning and from this generosity of the alliances ecosystem that's been created. And I'm sure you've learned that you had this practical demonstration that interoperability is about technology and IT, of course, but not just about technology and IT. Is also about we've heard about academic standards, academic support, many other things. So at the end is this interoperable transversal element for this seamless cooperation that we are looking for in the area. And I see now Michael, at the bottom of the room. Please go ahead.
Yes. Thank you for the presentation. I think a very lively. Just what do you think are you doing there? Are you actually going to forward the activities, the pilot, or the activities of your science? Or is that actually rapid transformation of the institution? And how difficult is that in regards to your regional levels?
Can you repeat the question? I'm not sure I heard the question well. So
the question is, sorry, go ahead, Michael. Yeah.
It's mainly that you focus on, that is of course the idea, you want your alliance going, but what is the wider impact of this? Is that actually transformative for your whole institution? I mean, can you say already was, this works actually so well, we can mainstream that. And what is also how difficult is the regulation outside of the institutions when you're on national level?
Where do you want to start? Yes.
Well, with the specific example of the BAS, of the Bachelor of European Studies, we've already seen and that what we've learned and discovered within the concept of that program, we can also use in other corporations outside of the alliance. For example, and now I'm speaking from my institutional perspective, KU Leuven also has joint programs also on a bachelor level with UC Louvain in the French-speaking part of Belgium, which is a different regulatory framework as well. So it's easier to cooperate with a Dutch university than with a French-speaking university in Belgium for us. But what we've learned procedurally and technically, we're already putting to use also in that cooperation. So there we have what we learn, what we use, we try to implement across the university and improve all the cooperations that we have, regardless of it's inside or outside of the alliance.
Want to add? Yes.
I can jump in quickly. If I think about our university, there's constantly IT things happening anyway, and the same is true at every institution across Europe. So us thinking about how we structure our data, the data model we have, that is important because the changes will be happening regardless, but we'd much rather that we are lining up with other universities in the Netherlands and in our alliance and outside of our alliance across Europe, because unless there is that healthy pressure to make a change to push us towards something that lines up, it will not happen. And so for us, in the Netherlands, most of the universities are part of a European alliance already. It's a healthy external pressure to just push us towards something that would be changing anyway, but at least this way we're changing together.
Yeah. Same, very similar to what Ben said, because in our case, I think the university has been planning to, for example, create a central database of all learning outcomes for a long time now. And it's always seen like a very difficult endeavor. I needed one, but difficult and sort of, I think this now is providing the push. Also is providing the opportunity to do it in a way that's consistent with standards outside. So we're gonna do this big investment. We don't wanna do it in a way that in 3 years down the road, we have to change everything. So being able now to connect with all the alliances, with all the universities and making sure that at least it's gonna work for a group of us, I think give us the strength to go forward. That maybe we wouldn't have done it otherwise had we gone alone.
Thank you. And if I may jump in, and also for closing this panel, let me quote Theo Bastiaens here, because the three, then you will tell me if you agree, but the three of the alliances we are here represented are coming from long-standing networking and collaboration together, the three of us. So when we came up with these alliances as a new instrument to push the things forward, our idea is not just create a new project, but to align our own strategies within this common goal. And now I'm quoting Theo because he said, we will do it without the hours from the Commission, or with or without these hours from the Commission. And I think this is our cases here. So indeed, we want to also help to transform ourselves, our individual universities to be at the forefront of the higher education in Europe. And with this, I will thank you very much again for this very interesting roundtable and give the floor to the next roundtable. Thank you very much.
Okay, we are going to the closing and the summit reflections, and you have to be very strict. People have to leave at 12:30, so we have 31 minutes left for this. Again, a short panel, and I want to invite Angels Vito, rector of the WOC, and course, also the lead of the Open EU Alliance and also Vice President of EADTU. Welcome. Michael Gebel, Head of the Higher Education Policy Unit from the AUA. The one who asked a lot of questions. Good, great questions. They know that it's really good. No. Achilles Cameas, Dean of the Faculty of Science and Technology from the Hellenic Open University. And yeah, let's start. Everybody can have its own reflection on this morning. What are the challenges? What are the pros, the cons? And ladies first. So, Anshul.
Thank you very much. I would like to take the opportunity to thanks to the EADTU organizers for making things happen. It's a lot that has been said, so I will try to summarize some of the highlights that we have listened today. I think that first of all, and if we bring this conference to a close, it's important to remember that at the heart of everything that we have listened today, we have talked about the skills, systems, databases, but at the heart of everything we have discussed, we have people. People is more than skills, is more than data, is more than everything. And I'm not talking only about the students, I'm talking also about teachers, about workers, about community. A lot of people whose lives are transformed by the opportunity that we provide them through education. And that is at the heart of our purpose. We do know also that Europe is facing many ongoing challenges that demand urgent attention. So I would like also to highlight this idea of urgency. We have technological advances, we have demographic and territorial imbalances, we have economic shifts, geopolitical tensions, a lot of challenges that must be tackled through education too, and that has a clear impact on workers. Therefore, our mission is not only about providing access to all these people, is also about providing opportunities, new opportunities. So we need to evolve as the world is changing too, and as universities, because at least we are universities, we have to maintain this strong focus on knowledge. Knowledge provides us legitimacy, provides us plurality, provides us evidence. So we need to get knowledge not only in research, but also sharing this knowledge through teaching and innovation. As an example, the European Commission, this union of skills is crystal clear in its vision, and I will read it: investing in people for a competitive European Union. So this means to investing in delivering basic and advanced skills and providing opportunities for reskilling and upskilling. And we always say all of this together, but it's not the same to reskill than upskill. We need different strategies, and we have to be aware of that. No? I think that the EADTU Summit, it's a good place to say Open Universities has a strong responsibility in this common goal because of many things. One of them is because we are mainly composed by lifelong learners. This is one of our main singularity, more than being ruled by technology, is that we have in our classroom lifelong learners. And because our mission since our creation has been to widen higher education opportunities for all. And just let me give you some examples about what happens in our region because of the Open University of Catalonia. 50% of students with a disability in Catalonia, 40% of students living in small towns, 50% of women who have suffered of gender harassment are in our virtual classroom, all together. So this is the idea that, yes, it's about access, but it's about giving opportunities to people that with any other modality couldn't have achieved their own goals. So We have technology as our core. This technology gives us a lot of opportunities now. Artificial intelligence is an opportunity for us for personalizing learning experiences, for enhancing student outcomes, for streamline operation. And when all of this technology is used ethically and with human-centered values, I think that we will contribute definitively to a more equitable and educational landscape where all students have the support they need to success. It's all about people. People at scale, not only skills upscale or data upscale. And that's the reason why I think that open universities are particularly well positioned to provide flexible and accessible learning solution. Therefore, we are becoming a vital component in the meetings of the European Union's evolving agenda. This union of skills are very important for us. This competitiveness compass as opportunity for us to contribute to be at the center of the debate about how we make a more accessible but a more transformative European higher education area. So one of the main conclusions is that together we can do even more and even better. No, so as has been already said, harnessing interoperable educational systems that are beyond technology can make such opportunity available for all. And I think that the previous roundtable has talked about this. As we have heard in the previous table about European alliances, we are dealing with interoperability. We are making this interoperability into a reality, and we are forging a stronger connection between university. Therefore, we are making things happen, and the previous three evidences have talked about this. Let me talk a little bit about Open EU. As Karma has already said, we are composed of the leading open distance universities across Europe, and we are fully committed to pooling our resources, knowledge, and expertise to respond to that need, the need to invest in people for competitive Europe Union. Therefore, we have a strong opportunity to really advocate for a more accessible and transformative education. We have been working together for a long time, more than 4 years ago, but we started, as Pastor has mentioned, 6 months ago. And what we have learned is that even more important than the standards, quality assurance and regulation is the institutional cooperation. I think that Georgi Dimitrov mentioned it at the beginning of the session today, and also generosity. It's very important among countries, for sure, among institutions, but even more important when it's among people, among workers at our universities. And finally, just let me talk a little bit about policies. No, maybe we have talked about knowledge, we have talked about technology, we have talked about the value of alliances, but there's also a very relevant component that it's not only always in our hands, which is policies. No? Policies are essential to turn these ambitions into reality. I should say to escape from this no substance change scenario that has been mentioned today already. And with this idea, this European interoperable framework is a critical piece of the puzzle. I think that it offers this unified approach to cross-border collaboration and educational integration. And just 1 minute. I would like to say that we can scale through OpenEU. We are in this second scenario. We want to achieve the third one, but there's still a long way forward us into this second scenario. I think that we have the responsibility to push hard, because we have a huge opportunity to demonstrate that cooperation among universities, people and countries are possible. I just would like to finish to thank you all for your insights. It has been a very fruitful morning. Thank you for your shared commitment to building this more inclusive, connected, and sustainable higher education system that at least will help people again to achieve their dreams, their expectations, and their needs. So thank you very much.
So Achilles, your perspective from Greece, or your personal perspective on this morning? Oh.
Yeah, it's on. Okay, good. Well, first of all, hello everyone. I'm Achilles Kameas from Hellenic Open University, and I'm delighted to be here. And thanks again to EADTU for organizing another super very interesting summit with EU, always riding the crest of the wave, always focusing on the timely issues and the things we should be dealing with. And thanks again, thanks very much. I wouldn't be so arrogant to bring the perspective of Greece. I will only bring you my personal perspective. Otherwise, the gods will come after me, and this is not something I want at this point. It was really an enlightening event until now. So much information, but this we can also find on the internet. But the opinions and the perspectives we heard here, this we cannot find on the internet. We can find them, but you know, it's better to listen to them face to face, always. First of all, I'm really happy that I'm coming from the software engineering sector domain, let's say. So I'm really happy that interoperability is one of the topics that now is at the center of education sector in the software domain. This has been an old issue, and we are trying to deal with it for years. Well, we're not exactly there, but yeah, there's been some progress, and I think that it's been a positive. It has positive outcomes for the sector, and I'm pretty sure the same will happen here. And I'm also happy that we have this reference architecture that we saw today already out there. So it takes care of all the major components of interoperability. There's technology, there's data, there is processes, there is services, there is users. All of it is there. And there is applications also. And one thing we have to do now as institutions is, I think, try to map what our internal systems and processes to that architecture and see where we want to go, where we are and where we want to go. And well, that is one thing that came to my mind listening to this. I don't know if it has happened already. Perhaps we should go after an interoperability plan per institution, as we have done for other very important aspects, and see. And this should be probably mandatory at some point. We had we heard this opinion today. So let's see if every institution could have an interoperability plan and try to implement it. But then, although interoperability is a really positive goal and vision, perhaps there are some issues to be taken into account. I mean, university is a system, right? It operates within a broader context. So there are already mechanisms there, there are already data, there are already people. People are really important. And there are already things outside the university, the socio-cultural context. And all of this will be affected if we start shifting towards interfacing with each other and becoming interoperable. And will this be accepted internally? You know, we academics, we all have strong opinions about things. So are we compatible within our system so that our system becomes interoperable with other similar systems? And then what's going to happen if this takes place, and to what degree? I mean, in software, we have the APIs. I think you talked about that in your opening speech, but the APIs do not reveal anything from the internal structure and internal processes and internal data. So there is some sort of protection there. Do we need this? We want this here. So there is always a balance between protection and being open and being interoperable. And then is it really dangerous for the small players to be interoperable? I mean, we've seen it also happening at the political level. So perhaps these are some considerations to be taken into account. Then, is this going to be a marketplace or is it going to be a war field? Another thing to consider. And I am positive about interoperability, right? But I'm just phrasing some concerns. I mean, I heard 3 European university alliances here talking about interoperability, and then I realized that a European university alliance is a system of systems, but then EUAs are different systems as well. So what are we creating here? Are we creating multinationals? Universities as multinationals, and then they compete at a higher level? It shouldn't be like that, no? So yeah, European university alliances are the seed that will lead us to this change, but then we must be careful that we don't create silos at a higher level, but again, that will need to become interoperable at a higher level. So we are propagating the problem again and need to deal with it. That's, I think, something we need to avoid. We heard a lot about standards and compatibility and all of that. So perhaps, I don't know if it's there, but if there isn't, perhaps we should look for a real standard, and CEN standard, for example, because interoperability is a process, right? It affects processes. So if we are all in favor of it, let's make a standard, perhaps EADTU, EUA. I think the associations have a big role to play here to help towards that with standardization bodies and arrive at a standard to say, if you want to be interoperable, this is what you have to do. So this is beyond the plan. Okay. Then 2 other things I wanted to bring forward. One is the breakdown. We always think positive, and when things go well, yes, everything is fine. But then if something breaks at the level of technology, at the level of processes, at the level of data, we need to be prepared to deal with it. Interoperability has also, perhaps it won't work at some point for some reason, then we need to be able to deal with, to still be interoperable while the system has broken down at some point. Again, something that comes from my experience from software and Internet of Things, where we have this problem at a huge level, billions of devices that have to be interoperable, but they are closed, and then they are not always there. So how many of them do we need for the system to work? Again, here, how many of the processes do we need in place for the system to work? And I think to take into account. And finally, how long will it take? How long will it take to get there? And who are the people who we expect to use this interoperable educational area, higher education area? We saw learners put in the center, of course. These are the main recipients of our services. But if you go in the interoperability reference document, you will see other users as well. Angel's mentioned them already. And I think we should put them also at the top level. It's not only learners for whom we need to design interoperable systems. It's also personnel, administrative personnel, teachers, other people that are within or around the university system and ecology at a higher level. So with all these things came to my mind after having this discussion, this very nice discussion here. And thank you very much for making me think so deeply about interoperability.
Thank you, Achilles. Michael, you have been around for many, many years in this higher education policy.
Yeah.
What's your perspective? Also, from a historic, maybe perspective, you can talk about it.
I try.
Looking back, are we walking into the light, or?
Yeah, at least I hope so. I hope it doesn't become a battlefield and it doesn't become a market. And I mean, the setup that
The
at the
marketplace in
moment.
the sense of the agora, the ancient Greek agora.
Yeah, okay.
The exchange place, the place for exchange.
That was a friendlier place. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
good. Yeah, no, I saw marketplace more like commercialization and not very inclusive. So that's the whole. I think actually interoperability is probably a complicated word, but it's also a relatively good word to use. I like it much better than standards. But as you mentioned, that I come from the Bologna side, and there has been a slight aversion against standards. We talked about conversations, I think, a convergence. Nowadays, I think you can also say harmonization, but we didn't even like harmonization. And it created a common language, like we talk about learning outcomes, we talk about social dimension, we talk about the standards and guidelines for quality assurance. And then we always explain it's not really standards, you know, this is actually quite soft, and have a look. It's not dangerous, it's not real standards. So we share terminology, principles, and hopefully intentions. But behind this is, and I think this is where you suffer a bit from, it's very differently implemented. Very different regarding the approaches and the processes, and that creates a lot of work now for the alliances. Sorry for that, but it's actually good that you take that up. And every time I go to an alliance meeting, you get these presented, you know, these are things that normally happen in the machinery room of an institution, but you bring them to the surface and discuss them. So I think that's really very important. I think when we talk about interoperability / standards, we have to be aware that this might not be welcomed by everyone, and several of you pointed to that. When you look through the press releases from yesterday, from the adoption of the joint degree, the European degree, you find the Estonian Minister Kallas quoted with, "In the drive towards a common degree, we will not notice how we lose our biggest strength, our diversity." That's very grim, isn't it? And by the way, this was also a concern when the Bologna process started. Yeah, so it wasn't welcomed by everybody, and there were all kinds of concerns. And I think, therefore, it's very important to think of how we communicate about that, and also about the intentions and the use cases. Claire pointed to the effort and demand issue, and maybe we have to carve that out. So there is clearly the political, economic aspect, and looking at the new policies that are put out. Of course, it's about the sovereignty, it's about the common European market, the competitiveness, and all these issues. And clearly also that this is not just about the alliances, but this goes about broader needs. When we look then at the use cases, I mean, EUA has put up the all European course catalog as an utopia. You said very clearly in the, it's not yet there, you know, there is probably not much appetite for this at the moment. But just to let you know, it has been discussed at some stage in the Bologna process. That's about 10 years ago. And I think it was the Hungarian colleagues who came forward and said, we can do that. We put together the all European course catalog. All courses in Europe, all programs will be on that catalog. This has been turned down for several reasons. But one of them was obviously feasibility, technical issues, also interoperability. But it was also the question, what is actually the demand for this also? Is a lot of our teaching is still in national languages, you know, and lots of other things. So we couldn't really find a use case. Evelien and also others have pointed to the Erasmus, and I think that's a very clear use case, something which established already interoperability before digital actually came into the game. And we can also see that some problems still prevail. We come out next year with a bigger report on Erasmus Plus, on a survey that we conducted 2 years ago. And I have to say, in all these years at EUA, I have never read so hateful comments than the ones that we had there on some of the European student card and the tools that it uses, Erasmus without papers. And so people, it just confirms that also there the automatization is not yet that very far advanced. People still have to exchange Excel sheets, not because the tools don't exist, but because the tools that are there didn't work when they were to. So that's clearly a case that we have to consider. but also being aware that the technical issues are, of course, one of the obstacles for student mobility, but there are other ones, the housing, and also I have to say that on a self-critical point, we are representing institutions. It's also, we talk in the UA report about the mentality of making things work. There's also a mentality of making things not work.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? In particular when it comes to recognition. And this is something I think that we have to challenge and that we have to address. I think the alliances are, at the moment, for me, that looks like a very good case. I mean, it creates a lot of work for all of you, but I think it's also good to have something like, which is not, well, top down meets bottom up, you know, so we are testing it and assessing it and upscaling something that we think we have not done properly on the Erasmus tools. You know, they are just thrown in and then from one day to the other, they have to work. So I think that's a very important process, and that also allows you to communicate on that. And I think that's very good. And so my question would then just be also, if we learn from this, what would be the next European use case then? Yeah, is it maybe also that we say, okay, most of these learners, they might not actually need the big course catalog on where they can study bachelor's and master's across Europe. You know, they probably know what they want to study, and then probably they know the country or they know the language that they speak, and they operate from there. But maybe there's something to be gained when we look on lifelong learning, continued education, something that we found is a little bit underemphasized at the moment in the discussions, also given the challenges that we meet. I mean, we have seen the Union of Skills, and if we want to step that up, somebody mentioned migration. I think that was Evelien as well, you know, and so I think that would be a case where you also have dealing with a learnership which might not be too interested into home universities, but is just interested into courses, and how can we take this forward? And I think that we would be very interested in that. Yeah,
Perfect.
So thanks.
So thank you also making this last point. It's also about making the competitiveness of Europe bigger, and we do that by a skilled workforce. And we forgot all about it because we started it that way. But so now it's time to ask questions from the audience. Anybody? Remarks, questions, comments? Nothing? Who is the first? Go ahead.
Well, thank you for
Evelien.
So I think I really love the metaphor of the systems and then creating the overall ecosystem, and on which level are we going to standardize, let's say, or harmonize, and also where is it needed. So I'm curious to hear your perspective from maybe an engineering perspective, I'm not sure if that's the right one, on how we might kind of switch the narrative from loss of diversity to increasing diversity because we are interoperable, because we have standards up to a level, because we're not trying to standardize everything. I mean, if you remember my 4 layers of education, let's standardize the logistical stuff, please, because that's going to make the world better. And then let's not standardize on, you know, what we teach or how we teach, because teachers can still use whatever they want in their local format, in their local language. I don't know. I was wondering about it.
Well, what I know that's happening or has happened in the IT sector is that the interfaces are standardized, not the internal mechanisms. So in order for systems to interoperate, to be compatible, the interfaces and the data are standardized. The data exchange, not what is doing. So what happens internally in a system, in a device, you don't need to know unless you are a repair person. So otherwise, you don't need to know. All you need to know is how you can plug one device with another device and they can work together. So it's the standardization of the interface that we're talking about. And then or the meta description of the interface, if we don't want to use the word standardization. So there must be a way to describe what I can give and what I can take, and that's how it works. And then there is a not contrary, but a parallel approach of openness. So you open up everything up to a point, and then whoever is curious enough or whoever has time or skills can go inside and see the mechanisms, see the processes, how it works, and maybe can change them. But I don't think this is something that could apply here, at least not at this stage. But surely at the interface level, I think this is where we should be looking at.
We need a simpler.
Exactly.
No. No, I think that's perfectly okay, and I think that's also where the angst probably comes from. You know, to distinguish between. Well, I think nobody is against standardization of the plugs. Every time you go to the UK or Italy or Switzerland, you say, "Damn, I forgot it again." But we don't want to use all the same devices that you plug in. So, and yeah, I think the interface is good. Yeah.
I'm an economist, so maybe in this under this engineering point of view, I have nothing to add. But you have made me think about this shift of these changes in the narrative, no? And sometimes when we talk about the scalability, we are thinking about business, no? And I think that within the landscape that we have described, as a non-for-profit higher education system, we have to take into account that the scalability is opportunity for everyone, no? And in this sense, I think that the whole public system has to be resilient, has to not giving up, to be also accessible to this scalability opportunity that new technologies are bringing to us, no? So I think that the narratives have to change also under this business model perspective.
Comment, because you said increase the diversity or the membership, and also linking with the idea of the narrative. I think that what we do with interoperability, we join degrees and alliances, is not to increase or diminish diversity, but to give an opportunity to really live the huge diversity that already exists.
Exactly.
Because we know there is diversity, but we give it only to a certain extent, and it's to a very limited extent. So that's part of the new narrative here, to live the diversity. Then we'll see whether this increases or diminishes.
Yeah.
That's beyond that.
I think so. And if you see, after Bologna, I think we're naturally evolving into a next phase. You can tell. Even before Bologna, you would never have dreamed that we would end up here, even integrating even more within Europe. But somehow this tension stays. We need freedom, but then in connection with each other. So, but what kind of degrees of freedom do you really want to have as an EU? Total freedom, it's not a connection anymore. So that's also not the idea. So, and I think that with the forthcoming years, we work on this idea of getting further connected with each other without losing freedom. Last one.
Yeah, but also that comes from the early days of Bologna, probably. But one argument was at some stage that, I think that was in Berlin, that 3 universities would offer 3 different chemistry programs. Yeah. And that was seen as an argument against it. Yeah. Whereas it is actually a strength. If you look, that one was more research oriented, the other one was more applied, and you know, but I mean, it was made visible, and I think that's the important thing, also from the point of students, and also from a general public interest. Yeah.
Okay. We want to wrap. We have to. It's time. Sorry, I have to end this session. First of all, thank you for the panel, and give them a hand. Thank you all for participating this morning at this EADTU event. If you can get enough, we have a full conference in October in Hagen, Germany. So you're welcome to join us there too, because there are many papers, and we're going to deep dive into content and also in this alliance kind of question. So I hope I can, you can see us in Hagen in October. For now, thank you very much. We still have the connection, so the network lunch planned now for an hour. So if you have questions or remarks, please discuss it with each other or with the panelists or with the speakers. I hope you have a great day and a good trip home, and see you next time. Thank you very much.
I think